Hello, welcome. Welcome to everyone joining. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, welcome. I'm Corey Richards, and I'll be your host today for our webinar, and I'm joined by Emma Mason. Do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, Emma, I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Okay. I'm Emma Mason. I'm the chatbot design team lead here, and I've been with Mobile Coach for over 7 years now.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Welcome everyone to our new Zapier module, which we're going to explain today. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. I will be recording and sending out this webinar later today. I know I had some people who were interested in that, who weren't able to join. But everyone who's here today will still get the recording. And I'll also be sending out the slides, which will have a bunch of resources that we're going to mention. And throughout, so far, we're a pretty small group. So please pause us along the way. If you have some ideas that you'd like to talk about, you have questions. I don't think the content that we have prepared will take the full hour. So we've got plenty of time for questions and to talk about specific ideas that you may have. All right, well, let's get going to the agenda. Oh, one plug that I had, just remembering, I'm putting in the chat, but if you're interested in catching up on more of Mobile Coach updates or chatbot content, here are two LinkedIns. We have Mobile Coach and Vince Hahn. And that's where we're posting a lot of our content. So if you're not already following those two places, here's the links to go. Make sure that you're up to date. Okay, so today, here's what we'll be covering. Here's our quick agenda. And we're going to start at a really high level, thinking about integrations in general, and then we'll get specific into Zapier integrations and when are those the right idea. And then we'll talk about the basic structure of setting up a Zapier Zap with Mobile Coach and how to think about them. And then finally, Emma is going to show off an example integration that we've done and also walk through the integration specifically and talk through our module on how to build one yourself. Okay, so let's dive right in. And hello, welcome to everyone that's joining now. We're just getting started, so you're here at the right time. So when we're thinking about integrations in general, our goal is for a chatbot to extend a personal automated conversation. And the why behind that conversation is going to differ from project to project. So maybe you have a chatbot on a website that you just need to answer a question. So the goal is really reduce previous human effort and increase the level of support that your web visitors are getting. Or maybe you have a new hire chatbot whose goal is to reduce turnover. So those are very different whys for the chatbot. But in both cases, you may have need for integrations and to personalize that conversation for either participant. So when are those the right idea? One is for the user, improve their context. So making it feel like a personal conversation that knows and understands their needs can really improve engagement and help someone get the tools, the information they need better than if the chatbot is just this anonymous experience that doesn't save or personalize for them. And then on the author side, so those of us who are building chatbots, it can be really helpful to personalize that interaction if it's going to improve our management. So there are some cases where a little bit of personalization or integration can go a long way to making it easier to build and maintain the chatbot. Emma, anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers how we would think about it.
Okay, great. So when we're thinking then about why personalized specifically? So we kind of understand the general goal, but what would that mean in practice? So first, we're going to see increased attention when that conversation is contextual for the user. So if let's take the new hire example, I get a message to me that says, "Hey, have you completed your certification?" But I'd already told the chatbot I completed the certification. That would feel totally out of place, and I would probably stop paying attention to that conversation because it doesn't know me. It doesn't know what I'm doing. Whereas if the chatbot were to say, "Hey, I know you finished your certification, but this is your next step," that then feels very personal. It feels like it knows my situation and is giving me tools just for me. And so there's a big difference there for the user and kind of how you're teaching it to understand and utilize the conversation. And then, as I kind of mentioned, we have decreased administrative work. Emma, I know you had some ideas of what that would mean for folks.
Sure. So our number one, the first implementation I ever heard of or was involved with for Zapier was creating a custom dashboard for one of our clients. So we think that we have a pretty great reporting dashboard on our platform, but they were very low staff and very pressed for resources in general, and they wanted to just be able to get a constantly updated Google Sheet that had all of the data that they were looking for. So we were able to build them this dashboard, just pushing data to that Google Sheet. So every time they went in there, they had the most up-to-date data for their chatbot, and they didn't have to pull a report and do any of the analysis. So that really took away any of the administrative work of like logging into the platform, pulling the report, doing the analysis. It just was all sitting there waiting for them. An additional idea there would be, we have several clients who, when they want to add new users to the chatbot, they send us an email and they attach a sheet of users that they want added to the chatbot, and then someone has to manually go in and add those users to the chatbot. It's really not that much work, but there is, of course, always the like bureaucracy of having to get that list together and then send the email and then wait for someone to like get the email and then add the users. You know, all of those steps can also just be totally wiped out by a super simple integration through Zapier where you can just like add users to a sheet and they just immediately are added to the chatbot with all of the data that they need to get going. So just kind of two ideas there to maybe spark some thoughts. But there are lots of ways that just a really simple integration that doesn't really require an IT person could help reduce the amount of work that it takes to set up a chatbot, get it to work the way you want, and then to get the data out of it.
Thank you. Those are great ideas. Okay, and so then the last reason to personalize is also just to meet users' expectations. So I know there's been a ton of chatter about ChatGPT, and all of our expectations for what an automated conversation need to have really been upgraded. And I think even before ChatGPT, users' expectations are pretty high of what they think it should be able to do. Reasonable or not, that's where they're at. So we want to do our best to meet those expectations. So again, a little bit of personalization can really get you there. So quickly, what are some ways that we can personalize a chatbot? So these first three are not integration specific. So the first one is we can adapt our script based on our audience. So for example, maybe you have a new hire onboarding chatbot and you have 5 different job functions that the chatbot goes to. So if you know those job functions, when they join the chatbot, you can then send very specific tailored content to them based on their job function. So maybe 80% of the chatbot is the same, but that 20% that is specific to the sales team and then differs for the client services team, that can go a long way to helping someone get the extra details that they need to feel confident and comfortable as they're beginning their new job. And then another example is saving user responses. So I kind of mentioned that where someone told the chatbot they completed their certification, and the chatbot then saves it and knows it for the future. So again, really simple concept, but that can help improve the conversation for the user and also for us administratively. And then another idea is user-driven customization. And we're really seeing people adapt to this idea or utilize this idea more in chatbots, where we're asking the user, hey, when do you want to schedule something? Or how often do you want to receive messages? What time of day do you want to receive messages? And this will help someone kind of take ownership of the conversation and buy in to it and say, okay, I'm getting messages at this time, so I'm going to pay attention to them because I chose this. And it also kind of cuts away some of the noise where it can be hard to find someone at the right time. And then the last one, of course, is integrate with other systems, which is where we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about. And this can take it from just information that's happening within the conversation to lots more context. So we can add things outside the chatbot conversation that make it a lot more personal and more useful for everyone. We're just rolling through, but please, if you have questions, thoughts, ideas, put them in the webinar chat or the questions and answers. Okay, so now I want us to think, when is integration the right idea? Because I have seen a lot of people get really excited about these types of ideas, but it's not always the most useful. So sometimes we'll add new cool pieces of technology or items to any project just for the sake of we can do it. But we want to kind of pause and ask ourselves some questions to make sure that we're not just increasing our scope for no reason, but it's actually something that will help and serve us in the long run. So the first one is, does this directly impact my chatbot's purpose? So when we're creating a chatbot, we want to have a clear sense of, why does this chatbot exist? Why does it exist for our users and for our organization? And so with this integration, is this going to directly improve or impact that general purpose? If so, probably is a great idea. And then the next question is, will this improve the user experience? So maybe it's not going to impact the chatbot's purpose, but it does do a lot to further that contextual experience or to improve that user experience. And so it's worth it because we want to meet those expectations of our user. The next one, kind of as Emma's mentioned, it will improve our maintenance experience. So like with reporting, maybe it won't help the chatbot's purpose. The user will have no idea that we're getting this reporting easier, but it will save our team a ton of time in the long run, or maybe not a ton of time, but enough time that it matters to set it up and then just let it run. And then our last question that we should ask ourselves is, can I actually get this information? I've had a couple of conversations where we all just expect data or information to be easily accessible, but some systems do not make it easy to get those details. And so it may not actually be possible, or we may have to ask a developer on a system side to open up those data points for us. So that can lend some difficulty. Okay. So now thinking about, well, what does it mean to integrate? What does this look like? So this is actually pretty general. It's not just specific to Zapier. It's really with any of our integrations. This will look like, one, a triggering event. So something happens, and then when that happens, it is going to send updated information and or a chatbot message. So let's look at some ideas in practice. So idea one, a learner registers for an event. So you can think of this like a training event or a webinar. They register for something, and then that information is sent to Mobile Coach who then has the details to send a reminder. So we update our system when we say, okay, Corey has registered for this training event. It's on this day. It's about this topic. And then I'm going to send her reminders and information about the event. Maybe that even includes some reinforcement after. So I know she's gone to the event, and I'm going to keep contacting her about it. Another idea might be a user creates a goal. So this could be in the chatbot where I say, hey, I want to work on this goal. And then the chatbot triggers a calendar invite to send. And then my last one is a user completes a survey. So this happens a lot where we're using our chatbot as a survey tool because it's really, really easy to just answer a question. And then kind of as Emma mentioned, we then send those details out to update a spreadsheet, which would work really nicely if we had a survey in lots of places and all of the data was kind of going into that one spreadsheet or that one analytic tool. And we want all of the data sources to just populate in one place, so we're not having to grab it everywhere. So we can have the chatbot just send the details right to that spreadsheet. So again, as we're thinking about all of these ideas, we're thinking triggering event leading to data being updated and or a message being sent. And those are the basic mechanics of all of the integrations. Okay, pausing there. Any questions, ideas, thoughts? Emma, anything I'm forgetting?
Nothing you're forgetting. I think just something I wanted to say about like these ideas in general is that it really helps the chatbot become like a source of truth for the user. Like they know that they can rely on the chatbot to know like when they're registering for these events or what items they've completed in their LMS. Like they can rely that the chatbot will have the most contextual information and will be able to give them the best like support and reinforcement, because it isn't just working off of like a very generalized program. It's really knowledgeable about what they specifically have done and are doing. And I think that's definitely what you were talking about before about like why you would do this is the ability to give the user a lot more personalization and the chatbot a lot more context. And so I think like these three ideas that you've brought up really highlight that. Like if they're already on a reinforcement chatbot and they register for an event that is related to that reinforcement topic, the chatbot being able to know about that and send them really contextual reminders and information along with the other information they're already getting is like super powerful. So.
Yes, thank you. Great point. Okay, well, now let's see it in action. So I am going to stop my sharing and Emma is going to show us our chatbot example.
Let me make sure I'm okay. Okay, my screen is loading. All right.
All right, I see.
Okay, perfect. So in this example, what we've created is a spreadsheet. And this is just a very quick example. This is a spreadsheet where, let's say, a manager is looking at the list of their direct reports, and she's just kind of keeping track of like when our next one-on-one is and what I want to talk about during that one-on-one. So we thought, okay, so she's keeping the spreadsheet. There's a lot of tools that she could keep this information in, but just in this example, she's got this Google Doc and she wants to send a message through her chatbot that all of her direct reports are on each time that she schedules a new one-on-one and updates the talking points. So we've created a Zap that looks at this spreadsheet, and anytime the column of the one-on-one date is updated, it knows to send a text message to the person indicated here in this row to say, oh, you have a one-on-one scheduled, it's on this date, and here's what your manager wants to talk about. So that's super quick overview of what the purpose of this Zapier Zap is. Corey, anything to add there?
No, we're good.
Okay, so I'm going to just very quickly, this is going to be a skim over the top of how this is set up. Just to give some brief context, I'm an English major. I'm not an IT person. I am not like very tech savvy, and I set this up. So if you're going to look at this and feel a little bit intimidated, don't worry. I was a little bit intimidated too. But if you follow the steps, it's like extremely foolproof. And it can really add a ton of value to your chatbot just with this little bit of integration. So if you're looking at this and being like, oh, I need to like have a computer science degree in order to understand that, don't worry about it. You do not. Okay. So the first thing to do is to set up your trigger. So like we saw on Corey's slides, it's the event that's happening that you want to be the trigger for then something else to happen in the chatbot. So in this instance, you can see what we've set up is, can you expand for me, please? Thank you. Is that we want to run a piece of JavaScript code when a row in a specified Google Sheet is updated. Right? Also, we could add a new row, but in this instance, when we're updating a specific row. So we would select that for a trigger. We would go down to account. You would just connect your account. Zapier walks you through all these steps. It's extremely easy. And we would just go to our trigger, and then it'll pull in like what sheet you want it to look at. And it will then look at the columns in that sheet, and you can select from those columns what you want it to look at and what you want it to like kind of trigger off of. So in this instance, we've set it up to trigger off when someone updates the date that the next one-on-one is, then it will trigger sending the message to the user about that one-on-one. So all that is set up, and then you run your test. And this will essentially just have the Zap pull in test data to look at, and you could just make sure like, okay, yes, it's got everything in here that I want to be able to look at. So for example, you're seeing Corey's information from the spreadsheet. So like we can see her marketing role, and we can see like the date of the one-on-one as everything is now in the spreadsheet. So if I think all of that looks good, which I do, then we would save that. And we would go down here to the run JavaScript and code action. So I'm going to open this up. Don't worry. Again, it's going to look far more complicated than it is. Okay, so it's going to load for me. Okay, so the one note that I want to make here is that this box up here represents the data that's coming from this spreadsheet here that I want to push into the mobile coach platform. So the date of the one-on-one, the name of the person, their role, and the talking points for that one-on-one. And then the really only piece of data that is 100% required is their phone number or email address, because this is how the chatbot on our side will be able to know who exactly we're trying to send this message to. So in this instance, we need to have the phone number and have our, so here we're seeing just test data of Corey's phone number. These pieces of data will correspond here to custom fields on the mobile coach platform that you can set up. So this is where you can get very creative and have all of these fields here that are to receive the data from your spreadsheet, but you also don't necessarily need to have any custom fields or push any data except for the phone number. So it's just totally up to what your particular idea entails. And then we have this block of JavaScript. And the great thing about this is that you don't need to understand what's going on in this JavaScript. You just need to know what pieces to replace. So the pieces that you need to replace are highlighted in the documentation that Corey will send out after the webinar. But just to quickly go through, you'll just need to replace your chatbot secret and token that come from the mobile coach platform. you replace your coach ID, which also comes from the platform. And then you just tell the Zap which rule code you want to send. So in our example here, you can see that I'm just requesting it to send this rule that's called just send me. And there's not really, if you know how to set up a rule in the mobile coach platform, that's all you need to know for that. Okay, we scroll down past all of this that we do not need to worry about at all. And we just go down here, and this is where we are telling the Zap which custom fields I want it to send this data to. So the only kind of tricky thing here is formatting, but the formatting is exactly what it looks like. You just need to mirror how you've tagged things up here, and then the name of the custom fields and how they're formatted here, which for us will always just be with a underscore instead of a space, but everything else as represented here. So you can see if we look, date of one here, which is referencing the data of the next one-on-one, you can see that that is represented here in the custom field, date of one here at the top. So again, in the documentation, it will be more thoroughly explained if there's any formatting things there, and some kind of troubleshooting issues or troubleshooting tips if you're seeing an issue with like, oh, this doesn't look right, or I can't figure out why it's not mapping properly. But again, like it really is just saying, okay, so I set up this piece of input data with this format. Okay, so that's how it should look down here. Super easy. I just copied and pasted the whole thing from up here and from the platform into this format. Okay. Then the only other thing down here that you would ever need to look at would be here where we're telling it which rule to send. It's the same thing. You're just looking at the phone number. You just want to make sure you're referencing whatever you've named this input field up here for the phone number.
Another note, if you're using something like Microsoft Teams, where you're not using a phone number as your unique identifier or the thing you're going to connect the Zap with the user account, that would be an email address instead. So it's whatever field you're using. If you have both pieces of data, you could use both.
Yeah,
to be extra careful. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's all of the adjustment that you need to do. You don't need to touch anything else. And then we would click our continue down here, and then it'll have you generate a test. And so we can see in this test here, all we're looking for is for a status 200 and a status text okay. And that means that all of our code has run successfully. And we can even see if we look over here at Corey's, this is the mobile coach platform inbox. This is the record of Corey's interaction with this chatbot that I've connected to this Google Sheet. So you can see Corey has successfully received this message with that she's going to have a one-on-one on 4/3, and then the topics that I want to discuss with her, which are, of course, pictures of our animals. So yeah. Are there any specific questions about the setup?
I see Amy has a question, and it's, is the code you're showing in Zapier automatically generated, or is this like a special plugin from Zapier that works with Mobile Coach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is actually code that our developer Victor wrote. And so he's an actual like computer science person. So I think this probably took him 15 minutes to write or something. He was like, okay, super easy, all done. With the intent of knowing that we would edit these specific places. So this is Mobile Coach proprietary code that we're looking at here.
Yeah. And for this, so we have our templates that then you can use to edit and customize yourself. So you don't need a Victor to create them.
No.
Our templates exist for you to be ready.
Yes.
We are working on like a Zapier plugin, kind of like you're seeing with Google Sheets, or that you may be more familiar with. But we wanted to get this out and have people start using it with this JavaScript version. And I'm really curious if anyone starts to use it. As we're building out, we want to make sure that we're having all the plugins that people need, like all of the fields and items. So let me know if you use it and what you use it for. So that we, as we're further developing, we can ensure that we're including everything you need. Yeah, so this is version 1.
Yes. This is a very early version and still easy enough for us liberal arts majors to interact with.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through. So I did have a couple kind of Q&A that I was gonna workshop with Emma that I thought people might be thinking. So I will share my screen again, just so we can look at them. And then I think we may actually end up having to go back to Zapier in a moment. But first, Emma, how long did this take you?
So this took me, I would say, an hour, but that came along with, I made a very basic mistake at the beginning that just like totally prevented the code from working, that we have now like fixed in the setup of this code so that no one else will make that mistake. So I think without that mistake and all of the troubleshooting, it would have taken me 15 minutes.
Okay, yes. Actually, let's talk through what those steps were. So I'm guessing the steps are build the conversational element of your chatbot. So what's going to send?
Yes.
What else is there?
So yes, there's write the message in the mobile coach platform. And then you need to, in the settings, just allow that message to be available in an API push. And then you just go over to Zapier and you set up your trigger. And that honestly was the more like complex piece of it, because for the code, I just pasted in the code and then pasted in like my specific data into that code where I knew it needed to be changed. So it's essentially those two steps of setting up your trigger and then setting up your action, which in our case is the run JavaScript action.
And okay, thinking back to when you're setting for the mobile coach platform, I assume there's also the fields. So for this instance, we created a brand new test account.
Yes.
But I would think with other people, you may not have these fields beforehand. So you would need to create the custom fields in mobile coach.
Right.
And then I guess where the trigger is coming from, because we created a spreadsheet just for this demo. So that may exist already or not. So those are some other pieces.
Yes.
Okay. And what did you need to know to do this?
I think so. It kind of goes back to those questions that we discussed earlier about where was my data coming from? And yeah, exactly. And can I get that information? And then how do I want to use it? Like, what's my purpose? So I need to know all of those things. I needed to have a little bit of mobile coach platform knowledge, but it really is just the being able to know enough about how the platform looks to be able to find what I knew I was looking for, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. So for someone that isn't as familiar, I'm guessing that is, you need to know where those custom fields exist.
Yeah.
You need to know the settings, you mentioned settings, and then the rules.
Yeah.
For those, I guess the inbox, because you tested the inbox that you showed us.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now I'll go back. What other resources did you need? So you had your mobile coach knowledge. Did you use other resources?
No, except for, so Zapier, obviously. I don't think I needed any other resources.
Okay. So thinking about Zapier, for anyone that has not used it before and just joined because they were curious, that does require at a certain amount of like zaps sent. So if you have a bigger volume, that does require a paid account. But I think, what is it, like a couple of hundred zaps can be sent before a paid account. So for a lot of instances, you may not even need that.
Yeah.
And actually, I was going to mention when I was thinking about this, a second pair of eyes, because which is helpful no matter what when you're working on tech things. One, just someone to double check that you're thinking of all the assumptions or the user design that you need, but also if you run into any troubleshooting, it can be really helpful just to have another person to look at it. Okay, now let's do troubleshooting suggestions. We have a lot of ideas here.
So my number one, troubleshooting suggestion would be to just have someone else available to look at it. So the small mistake that I made at the beginning was that when our developer wrote this code out for us, he switched the order that the secret and token go into. So these two pieces of data that you grab from the mobile coach platform, he reversed the order that they show up actually on the platform. So me not really like thinking about it, just copied and pasted in the same order, and just nothing worked. And I checked everything else over 3 times. I looked at it with Corey. We got one of our developers on the phone. And after he was like, okay, that looks good, he had me go and check. And he was like, oh yeah, these are definitely out of order. And that's your problem. So just having that second set of eyes look at this and say, okay, wait, this says token, this says secret. Oh, these are reversed. Yeah.
Will you go back to Zapier? Actually, I'll stop sharing, and I have a couple other things that I wanted to point out.
Okay.
Others, full data for integrations and mobile. Yes, so this is just one example. Amy, you can use any existing Zapier integration, or as you can see with our JavaScript, this was one that wasn't in an existing plugin, but you can actually use what we did for things that don't have an existing plugin as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of systems currently have Zapier plugins. So any of the plugins will work. This was just our example to show. Okay, so looking at this, just some troubleshooting pieces. In the beginning top part, one thing, I don't know, as we were talking through it and testing, one thing I wanted to note is, in the testing. So testing is incredibly important. We want to make sure this is working. I have set up Zaps before, so this is just knowledge just for Zapier in general, but sometimes I'm setting this up when no data exists yet. It is impossible to test it without data. So we need to be able to try it once, go through it once, and then set up the Zap so you have data available. In other instances, I have tested with lots of real user data, and I need to find myself who is a fake user, so I don't accidentally test with a real person and send them something like 3 different times. So if you'll go to the drop down where it says spreadsheet D, Emma, this can be a little tricky to like find the right data, but if you click load more, you'll keep getting new users or new pieces of data based on how much it exists. So this is actually the end of the spreadsheet row.
All the data.
But that, just a really quick tip, do not send this with a real user. Get a test user, add yourself to the chatbot or someone else, and make sure you're selecting one of your test users for this. I maybe made that mistake before. Okay, and then let's look at the JavaScript. There are a couple thoughts that we had while we were running through and just thinking through what questions someone might have. So one is, I actually made this mistake when I was looking through it. When we have our data points, I was like editing something and I had removed an input data here. So I was like, oh, I don't actually need this, so I'll just take it out. I don't need it. But then below in the JavaScript, I did not delete it. So it was trying to find the data point here to send to update, but we were not giving it that data.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a silly mistake. Again, we just want to make sure that everything is in this block is also above. So when you're double checking and troubleshooting, that's one point to look at. Am I adding the fields that I am also sending? So just do those two match. And I think there's maybe two places that they exist.
Yeah. So here and then here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just double check those. And then as Emma mentioned, at the very top, we have our token and secret. And
Yes.
those two are just going to match with our end user. So there's not a lot of places you can troubleshoot, which is why if I felt silly as well when I was like, there's not that many places I edited. Where did I go wrong? We'll just make sure that all of those places match, and then you're golden.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention is when we're looking at this, what this can do is a couple of different things. So one, I guess it's two different things. It can update a subscription, which means it sends new data. So it's saying, okay, these fields were edited, or someone signed up for an event, something happened, so we want to update fields on the mobile coach side. It could stop there. All it could do is update data. Or you can also send a message. So send a rule or trigger a rule. So maybe you actually want to trigger something that schedules something in the future, sets them on like a calendar branch. So then they're going to get messages in the future, or send a rule right then and there. So the triggering event happens and we send a message from the chatbot immediately. So those are kind of the two options that are possible with this. So we update fields or we're sending a rule. We're triggering a message to happen in the mobile coach platform. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was this little chatbot down here that Zapier has. It will walk you through different troubleshooting steps if you're stuck with something, especially with their established plugins. This is a really good resource because they have a lot of data of troubleshooting them. So if you're trying to set something up as your trigger and it just is not making sense or it's not working for some reason, you can definitely click in here and it'll walk you through some really nice troubleshooting steps.
Which, speaking of that reminds me, we do have our support help. So support@mobilecoach.com. And you can email them if you run into, if you want the second pair of eyes to be us, we can look at it and help you with this or anything. And we have like office hours where we can get on a call and walk you through things. So Zapier can be helpful, and so can we. lots of people to help make sure everything is working. Okay. Anything else, Emma?
No, I don't think I have anything else.
Okay, great. Well, then the last thing I wanted, just one last thing before we go, I have a couple of pieces that I wanted to show everyone. So first, Emma mentioned our integration documentation. So I'll send this and all the links over right after this as soon as the recording is ready. So you don't have to keep track of them. But here is our documentation. So if you're wanting to try this out, you can just come here and it'll walk you through what to do. And actually a recording of this webinar will be in here as well. So you can review some of the tips and tricks we've told you. And then we also have just our normal documentation. So as you're building a chatbot, if you run into any trouble or if you just want to learn more, we have a lot of documentation built out and we're continuing to build it out. So there's some help tutorials for you as you're building. The next thing I want to mention is, in case anyone was thinking about ChatGPT, with this, we are working on kind of an easy API through ChatGPT, which is a plugin with their API. And so that's coming soon. I believe we'll have a webinar when it's ready, so you can come and look. But I just wanted to let you know that that's coming. And if you haven't seen this already, Vince Hahn wrote an article kind of comparing rules-based versus query-based chatbots. So if you want to learn more about that, here's an article for you. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is if you missed any of our user conference and you're sitting here and you're like, oh, I'd love to know what ways are people using chatbots, or what are some more information I can learn about chatbots. We do have our client showcases where you can see some highlights and watch the sessions. And then we have our use case sessions and our authoring sessions. And for each of these, I'll click on one of these. I went through and I wrote out the highlights. So if you just want to catch a really quick look at what happened and don't have time to watch a 30-minute presentation, you can get the highlights here. Okay, I think that is all we wanted to share with you today. Does anyone have questions or ideas they wanted to talk through? Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through. So unless you're vigorously typing right now, I'll sit for just another minute. But if you want to get some time back in your day, feel free, and we'll end soon. But thank you everyone for joining and your interest in this new module. And I can't wait. I hope people start using it. I really want to see what clever things people come up with. Ooh, Nicole, what a great question. Our favorite example of using mobile coach. Ooh, I'm gonna have to think about that. Emma, do you have any ideas off the top of your head?
Favorite example of using mobile coach.
Ooh, I just thought of one that Sterling helped with that I keep hearing about that is super cool. So Sterling, if you want to pop in the chat and describe this any more than I know, because it's not my project, but it was a chatbot where people could opt in to like diversity and inclusion topics. Sterling, does that ring a bell? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where like an organization just had a lot of initiatives they were doing around diversity and inclusion, I believe, but like no one knew about any of it. And it was just really hard to get people aware and following it. And so you could opt into different topics, and then you were getting information, reminders about what you cared about. So it was a way to disseminate information, make sure people are aware of like the good work that people in the organization were doing. And also paying attention, kind of that contextualization of what do I want to know? Because I don't have time for everything. Yeah. Hopefully I described that well, Sterling. Ooh, thank you. Thank you for the actual details. Oh, cultural days. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Emma, any ideas?
I think my favorite project that I've ever worked on was for a company that was really focused on helping people create like work-life balance. And the chatbot was actually quite intense, but like every week it would give you a goal to work on of like either finding ways to like be in fewer meetings, or like determining what's like your highest priority at work and like getting those tasks done rather than like procrastinating with a bunch of like little tasks. So like those sorts of topics that were both like really applicable to me and like my just everyday career life. And I think were impactful for the users of like actual, like it was very much a true micro learning course, and it was super fun to work on.
Nice. Sterling. So Sterling is on, and he is a great chatbot writer. Do you have any ones? Well, you're still describing it to us. You're still describing that cool use case. But Sterling, if you want to put in the chat your favorite, I'd be curious. We should have brought him in.
Should have just brought him on. Yeah. Next time.
Next time. Yes, we could certainly all use more balance. Okay, well, if there's, I'll wait just in case Sterling is typing, but yeah, I think that's it. Oh, typing fast is hard. Can I? Oh, I can allow you to talk. Sterling, if you would like to talk, if you want to, you don't have to. Put you on the spot.
Test. Is this working?
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey everybody. Yes, this is definitely easier than typing. The other cool use case that I wanted to share was just, this is actually a little bit nerdy about the mobile coach platform itself. I think the use case is definitely really cool too, but so it's both those things together. So a big technology company had a course that people would take, and then they would have folks sign up for the chatbot afterwards to reinforce that training. And there were 3 different kind of learning mindset related topics that they could receive content through the lens of that topic, like different learning styles. So they could choose the style that they wanted to, like week 7, right, of the experience would be about this topic, but it would be through the lens of whatever style the user had chosen. So that part was cool, but they also used the mobile coach platform in a really like outliney way. They used, for those of you who have seen it, they used like the easy info and code columns to really lay out the intention of the messaging with a lot of clarity. So it would make it easy for other collaborators or just other folks at their organization to come in and read through and see what the chatbot was doing with a lot more clarity than maybe just a standard setup would. And so I think there are some great takeaways from that. They have a discussion from our user conference. So this organization is Dell. So if you want to see a little bit more about their use case, like Corey mentioned, I recommend checking out their showcase from our user conference.
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat really quick if anyone wants to watch that. They did a phenomenal job explaining their chatbot and the work they've done. Jan, I really love that idea of the pre-work and kind of like the post. Yeah, or pre, during, after for a learning event. And I think with the automation that you can use, it would make it so much easier. Because I think that's one thing that has kind of paused people. A lot of people use it for post event, but sometimes it's hard to know when people join and making sure that everyone's getting the messages. So with automation, you can make that pre and during work a lot easier. Yeah, I really like that idea. Okay. I think we did it. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll send out all of the details that we've mentioned very soon, later today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you everyone. Bye.